Good morning. This is Jason Anderson again. This is discussion prompt number 2 on the idea distinguishing freedom and liberty. I've taught freedom and liberty in my government classes for a number of years, and I've always assumed that I had a fairly good grasp of the definition between the two ideas. Upon reading all of the documents for this discussion prompt today and starting on the research on my particular thinker, I realized that my notion of freedom and liberty is kind of like holding sand in your hand. The more I read about it, the more I was uncertain as to exactly how I understood these two terms. I can honestly say that after reading all of these and putting this discussion together, I do believe that I've come full circle, though, back to the point of, okay, I think that what I understand of freedom and of liberty and what I've been teaching of freedom and liberty to my courses in high school is pretty spot on. So let's go into these documents that we've looked at for this week. What about these two ideas? So the idea of freedom and liberty have developed, changed, evolved over thousands of years. The ancient Greeks developed and philosophized about the ideas of freedom. Plato, in his writings of Gorgias and the Republic, referenced and referred to freedom as a personal inner freedom, a personal issue. You should be and could be free from fear, free from intimidation. Aristotle broadened that notion to focus on directing oneself to the ends which reason would see and provide the best logical choices for you to make. So you have the inner freedom, the ability to make these good, rationed, reasoned thoughts, these rational reasons, decisions. So for the ancient Greeks in the ancient world, freedom was self-directed. It was intentional. It was not spontaneous. But it took work. It took thought. It took reasoning. The ancient Greeks saw this as a very deliberate process, a very deliberate decision-making process. Slavery was very common in the ancient world. And in the ancient Greek writings, we see the idea of slavery being brought up with the notion of freedom. A slave was not able to make his or her own decisions. Those decisions were bound by their master. A free man, however, did have the ability to make those decisions on their own. And the ancient Greeks tied these two ideas of freedom and slavery together as a good analogy. If we move from ancient Greek into ancient Rome, the great Roman statesman Cicero writes about the idea of freedom and liberty as well. And he kind of advances the Greek idea of freedom and liberty. He would still say that freedom is that non-interference, that ability of self-determination, making these choices. But he's going to take a look at liberty as something different. Liberty is, in Cicero's idea, is non-domination. The government not dominating the individual. Liberty allows for the possession of certain rights as well as the absence of subjugation within the framework of the law. Like the Greeks, Cicero agreed that citizens should enjoy the freedom to discuss and debate without fear of being threatened or coerced. In his writings in De Officiis, he noted that every action ought to be free from undue haste or carelessness. So we have the liberty and the freedom to think these things through correctly. Cicero also distinguishes there's a difference between legal rights and political rights that tie into this notion of liberty. There's a correlation to Cicero between citizenship, freedom, and liberty. So if you're a Roman citizen, you enjoy these liberties, these freedoms under the law. If you're not a citizen, those do not apply. All of these, as we look at all of this through what we've looked at this week, can culminate on June 15th, 1215 at the battlefield of Runnymede. And the Magna Carta truly for us is the culmination of these Greek and Roman, these ancient ideas carried through the Middle Ages. These ideas that liberty, freedoms, that liberties are something to be safeguarded and protected. No one should infringe or damage these liberties that Magna Carta put on paper and solidifies. On the monument at the battlefield of Runnymede is written, the Magna Carta is the, quote, symbol of freedom under the law. This idea truly solidifies this notion of liberty and freedom in the Anglosphere. And all of this takes root in the British colonies in North America.